All right there, guys, and welcome back to Storytime. It's been quite a while since we did the last one. If you guys don't recognize this series, maybe you weren't here and subscribed when I made the first three, but in April of 2020, I made 3 Storytime videos about different things that have happened throughout my life so far that I think would make interesting stories to tell you guys. The first one we did was when I made singing videos on Facebook for my school. The second one is when I went to Old Trafford to watch United beat Liverpool on the 23rd of March 2008. And the third one, which is personally, even including this story, the third one is still my favourite. It was the running track revenge one, where in 2011 I lost a 100-metre race against someone and came last out of everyone. And then in 2012, 1 year later, in the one lap race we had, I overtook this guy. Around the same part of the track he overtook me on 1 year earlier. That is still my favourite story, but this one's really interesting in my opinion. And I can't believe I didn't tell you guys this story when I did the previous 3. So just before we get into it, it's actually been exactly 300 days since I posted the first Storytime episode in April of 2020. 300 whole days. And we're back for the 4th one. Now this probably will be the very last one. I don't think I have any other stories that would be worth telling at all. So, this is the time I was a judge for my school's Dragon's Den. If you don't know what Dragon's Den is, it's basically this TV show where we have these people who are known as the dragons, and what happens is somebody comes up with an invention, an idea, proposes it to the dragons, explains what it is, what it does, and why the dragons should invest money into it, and how it will gain profit and they'll gain back profit from the product. So my primary school did this, and that's what we were tasked with. We all had to come up with an idea come up with an invention, what it is, what it does, and why it's worth investing into to make profit. Now, my idea was pretty boring, very boring, and definitely would not have won anyway. My idea was something that I called it the dog walker. Essentially, it's just a lead that can walk your dog by itself. It basically makes you sound like the people that would want that are very lazy, or they physically can't take their dog out. It's definitely one or the other. Either too lazy to do it, or physically can't. So yeah, my idea was a lead that could walk dogs by itself, known as the dog walker. And if I'm honest, I didn't actually want to do anything with it. I didn't actually want to take part in this Dragon's Den thing. I didn't want to make something. I didn't want to show it off. I didn't want to do any of that. But as you can tell from the title, it says I was a judge. So what happened? How did I become a judge? How did I go from being a participant like everyone else in my class to make something to being a judge? Well, it just so happened that on the very day we were meant to be making our invention, our idea, I was ill. Yeah, I happened to just not be feeling well that day. So I didn't go into school that day because of how ill I was feeling, meaning I didn't have to take part. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to create anything. So the teachers decided, well, if to keep me involved in this Dragon's Den presentation in some way, how about I be one of the judges? Essentially, I was one of the dragons. And it was being a dragon is way more enjoyable than having to watch everyone else take part and then having to take part yourself. I much preferred to being the dragon because you didn't actually really have to do anything. So what we had 3 categories that we were judging everyone on. There was presentation, the product itself, and I can't remember the third one. Alright, this was 2012, this was 9 years ago, alright? I can't remember every single detail, but I can remember that the product itself and the presentation were 2 of the categories. I just can't remember the last one. So what we did was, we had to give each person a mark out of 10 per category after they'd finished explaining what their invention was and what it did. And I was a lot more generous than the 2 teachers who were also judges, because I'm pretty sure I didn't give anyone lower than a 20 for any category at all throughout the whole thing. I'm not entirely sure. I might have given some people below less than 20 out of less than 20 out of 30 for something, but I don't think so. I think I gave everyone at least 20 out of 30 or higher. Unfortunately, I can't actually remember very many products at all. I really cannot barely remember anything. But there's 2 things I can definitely remember, or at least parts of it. So I'll tell you the ones that I can remember. One of them was Che's invention, alright? He came up with this remote that he called the 9-in-1. It was a remote that could do 9 different things. Unfortunately, I can't remember what any of those things were. All I do remember is it was a remote, and what he used for the remote. You know those little square juice cartons that they normally have in schools? The small juice cartons, the rectangular juice cartons. He used that as the remote. So all I'm gonna say is that's quite smart actually, because he could have been boring and just used, I don't know, found an old TV remote that he had at his house that never got used anymore. But no, he decided to use a juice carton and stuck nine buttons onto it. Now the only thing I remember from his presentation is me asking him, what if you don't need any of those things? And his comeback was so good. He just came back with, so don't buy it then. I remember that very well. Me asking him, what if you don't need those things? Don't buy it then. I mean, yeah. He was honest. If you don't need those things, you don't buy it. He wasn't beating around the bush or anything. So yeah, that's all I can remember for Chase, and the only other one I can remember is the winner, the person that actually won the whole thing. She is the only other person that I can remember of her product. I mean, the top three in terms of score, I mean, 90 is the highest score you could get, because 10 points, there's a maximum of 10 points per category. There's 3 categories, that's 30 points. There's 3 judges, that's 90 points. So the top 3 highest scorers were actually all girls. So the girls were clearly better at had more inventive ideas than the guys did. I can remember one of the guys I actually rated quite generously, because while I was calculating all these scores at the end, one of the guys literally had got 1 out of 30 by one of the teachers gave him 1 out of 30. 0 for presentation, 0 for the other category, and 1 for the actual product. I remember looking at that and thinking, wow, I've been very generous then, because I've been giving people at least 20 out of 30 or higher throughout this entire thing. But yeah, the girl that won had this machine. Basically, the idea was the machine can create any food that you want. That was the idea of this machine. It could create whatever food you wanted, it could make it for you. And the reason why I remember this so well is because she even had the example that she gave was the mint flavoured Kit Kats. I genuinely don't think I've eaten a mint flavoured Kit Kat since that day. And which was 9 years ago now. I think I think that's the last time I ever ate a mint flavoured Kit Kat. So she gave me and the 2 teachers 1 each for us to eat. So from being a judge, I got some free food out of it, so I'm not complaining. But I don't think I actually gave her the highest score. As in everyone who I gave scores to, I don't think I gave her the highest score out of everyone I gave scores to. But the 2 teachers who were judges, they did. They gave her very, very high scores. And she ended up winning. But once we'd finished our Dragon's Den lesson, it was the final assembly of the week before we all got to go home. So everyone else went into the assembly hall, and I sat in the classroom with a calculator working out all the scores for everyone to see who won. So while I was busy doing that. And then I finally finished, and I was like, okay, she won, she came second, and she came third. So yeah, as I said earlier, the top 3 were all girls. I didn't really check to see who came 4th and all of that. But yeah, the girls dominated our Dragon's Den lesson. And what's so weird, really, not funny, weird, is when I finally when I finished calculating all the scores and went into the assembly hall to join everybody else. You know how in assemblies there's always at the end of the week, I don't know if your guys' schools did this, but mine did, where they give you awards and certificates for doing certain things. Like, a teacher from your class will pick you as one of the people that's from your year that's got one of these awards. I don't know if anybody else's school did this, but mine did. I remember I got one of the certificates. I happened to be one of the people that got picked from my year. So I went up, stood over everyone. You know when you have to stand up and you have to carefully walk past everyone, try not to fall over them? You guys must know what that's like. Am I hitting you with a bit of nostalgia there? So I went up to the front of the hall with the rest of the people that had already gotten the certificates, stood there holding it like this. And what's so weird is the other person in my year that got one, because normally 2 people from each year get these certificates, get each week. But what was so weird is the person that got the other certificate from our year was the girl that won the Dragon's Den. She actually won the Dragon's Den. And she'd ended up getting a certificate the same time I did. So I remember she walked up, stood next to me, and I was thinking, wow, what are the chances that me being a judge for our Dragon's Den lesson gets a certificate, and the person that ended up winning also got one. So when we got back to the classroom, I announced who came third, who came second, and who came first. And that was probably the last ever fun lesson I had at primary school. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the last ever fun lesson I had at primary school before leaving it later that year. But personally, I'll always remember that. I'll always remember being a judge in our school's Dragon's Den. It was enjoyable because you didn't really have to do anything. You didn't have to come up with the invention. So, as much as nobody likes being ill, especially now, especially in the current climate, in the current situation we're in, but back that one day that I was ill and didn't actually have to create an invention is the only day I'm glad that I was actually ill for. Because being a judge in my school's Dragon's Den was way more entertaining and more enjoyable than actually having to participate in it. But yeah, that is going to be it for this episode of Storytime, and probably the series as a whole, as I really don't have anything else. I really don't have any other stories. To tell you guys, that one had been forgotten for a little bit, which is why I didn't tell this story more closer to when I made the first 3 episodes of Storytime. Which is funny because if you guys go back and watch those, my wart right here, this little wart just above my top lip, the day around the time that I made the 2nd and 3rd Storytime videos, I'd picked it to where it had come off, and basically the area where it is was bleeding for like, I don't know, like 4-5 hours before I literally wore a plaster on it for about 4 hours straight before finally taking it off, and it was gone. If you go back and watch episodes 2 and 3 of my Storytime series, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It was around Easter when I made the first 3. Posted 300 days ago. I posted the first Storytime video on this channel. 300 days later, we're posting the 4th one. So yeah, that is going to be the end of the video. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and if you didn't know, yesterday I posted my very first attempt at Firebase Z, the new zombies map in Cold War. That's on my 2nd channel if you want to go check that out. And I'm not really sure when my next video on this channel will be, because being in lockdown, vlogs are hard to come by, but I've managed to make a couple this year already. Always thinking of trying to think of an idea to do something when it comes to vlogging. I'm not sure when my next video will be, but until then, whenever that may be, catch you later.